Hey guys, and welcome back. I'm Rachel O'Leary, and today we have my box of plants from Texas water lilies, which arrived last night, that we're going to open up and take a look. I've also gotten together a lot of my potting supplies, and we're going to get this going. This is Venezuelan water poppy, which is very much a marginal. It grows about up to a foot deep. It does better if kept at the surface. This is giant Snowflake, which can go relatively deep, I think. Yeah, it can go up to 2 feet deep, so this will be a good one for potting deep. Mosaic plant is a floater. This is also a popular aquarium plant. Our sensitive plant, you can see how small it starts, and remember how large it got last year. Rain lily, which is again a marginal. You can see their bulbs. That's pretty cool. I've never gotten this one before. That one stays pretty close to the surface, up to 3 inches deep. Then we have water zinnia, which overwintered well for me, and I have a lot of. This is another one that does well, just a couple inches deep. So good for the top of a pot. Water celery. Variegated, which is really, really pretty. It's got like pink edging. Water celery goes, again, another really big surface one, which I got a lot of surface plants for down here in the greenhouse, as I want them to provide shade to the tubs. This is Aquatic Mint. This is one of my favorites because it's really, really fragrant. And Aquatic Mint can go, again, just a couple inches deep. And we got some mini cattails. These are another one that are pretty darn cool. And these can go about 5 inches deep, so they can go a little bit deeper because they come from areas that typically flood. Creeping Jenny is one of my favorite things to put along the edges of the pot. It grows really deep roots down into the water, which is great for fry hiding in, but then really dense cascading foliage along the surface. Then we have some pickerel. This can go pretty darn deep. Or pretty darn shallow. And then we have lizard's tail, which can go deep. And lizard's tail is one that's really good for not quite full sun. Imperial Taro, which can go 6 inches. And sweet flag. And sweet flag can go about 6 inches deep as well. Now I have a little list of everything I ordered and how deep it goes so that when I'm planning my pots, I can do so to have success. I also grabbed some root tabs for my lilies and some pots. Now these are solid pots, so for the marginals I'll drill holes in the bottom, but I have some other stuff too, and I'll use all this newsprint as well in the potting process. I have a ton of materials. I picked up 4 bags of aquatic potting soil, which is from my local nursery, which happens to be a Stauffer's. It's about $5 a bag, and then I'll cap it off with some of the Estes aquatic media. And generally I don't fertilize these marginals. I do have to fertilize the lilies. So what we're going to do is we're going to find some that can go, first I'm going to unbox the floaters and show them to you. Now I also have a bunch of floaters in the fish room that I'm going to move out, as well as a full tub of Azolla. But I like working with this mosaic plant because it's just really, really cool. And this looks like it got a little bit damaged in shipping, but it should rebound just fine. It's kind of disappointing that it looks a little beat up, but, you know, we'll just drop that in a tub to float for now and let it recover. Then we'll grab our sensitive plant. Now this I will move outside as well. Today is really cold again. It's only about 40 degrees Fahrenheit outside. So we'll have to wait probably until this weekend to to move any plants out into the tubs, but you can see these sensitive plants come as really small plugs. But if you guys remember, it got massive last year. So we'll just drop these in and let them get started growing. Now last year when I got these plants from her, they were much larger, so that's a bit weird. Perhaps they've had a lot more orders this year. Now the giant snowflake is one that can go pretty deep, so we're going to pot those first, I think. Now a couple of these plants are for my friend Sheila, so I'm just going to set them aside for her in their own tub for now. So when I pot these things, generally grab pots that have holes in the bottom. And I save all my pots from year to year. And then I line them with a piece of newspaper, and this just prevents the soil from falling out. Just cover the holes, tuck the paper down, then you can fill it with soil, and that way when you add it to the water, the soil doesn't just pour out the bottom of the tub and go into your tub. You don't want all those nutrients going into the water column, because all it's going to do is feed algae. And I'm going to plant these water poppies, probably each in their own small tub, just because they go deeper than most everything else I got. And for planting and overwintering, it's easier if you keep plants with like needs together within your pots. A lot of times in previous years, I've just sort of mixed everything up willy-nilly, and then some things have done well and some things haven't. So this year with these new plants, I'm going to do it a little different. Not that it hasn't been successful, but you know, try and learn something new each time. So you can see this plant has a crown. I'm going to put the roots into the soil, leaving the crown exposed. And covering up my newspaper. See, like that. And then I will cap that with some of the aquatic media. Now you could use pretty much anything to cap. Last year I used the pea gravel in here. This year I'm using this because I have it. And again, this just keeps it so that the soil doesn't pour out of the pot when you add it into the bin. So I just do like a ½ inch covering of the aquatic media, and then this is it, and then it's ready to go into a bin. We'll set it aside and then we'll choose where we're putting it. And I'm going to repeat that for these other ones. Let's see what I have here for pots. I don't find it to be particularly important with a lot of these marginals as to what size pot you use or what type of pot. There's aquatic pots like these for the underwater stuff that have the holes all the way through them, and then there's like nursery pots. As long as water can get into the pot, I haven't ever found the plants to be particularly particular, except for lilies, and lilies need to have a solid pot so that you can hold the fertilization in. So I like to use like old food safe buckets. I think last year I had 1 gallon buckets like this that I use for all my lilies. Enjoy this aspect of tubbing, playing around with all the plants. Super rewarding, as the vast majority of these will flower. Not to mention the roots that grow into the water column and the leaves that grow across the surface provide really great spots for the fish to, baby fish to hide and the adult fish to spawn in. the visual appeal of all the flowering and the greenery is just very rewarding. I've mentioned in a few videos that, like, even if you don't have a tub that's big enough necessarily for fish, or whose water doesn't get, you know, too warm or too cold, you can almost always grow a bunch of plants, and that, even in and of itself, is just really rewarding. Now for some of my plants, the ones that grow along the water surface, I'll show you when I move them outside, but what I do is I drill along the edge of the tub, and this not only allows rainwaters to overflow, but it also allows me to use zip ties to secure my bins to the edge of the tub so that the plants aren't too deep. In previous years, I've used things like bricks or milk crates even inside the tub to elevate the plants. But that takes up precious water volume, so I found that just drilling the tubs is really the easiest way to mount the planters. And zip ties are easy to use, they're inexpensive, and it's very effective. Now I have started the process of purchasing some inexpensive smaller tubs to show you guys the process of tubbing on a budget. And I hope to start that series, oh gosh, probably in a week or two. I'm kind of waiting until the weather's mild enough that we can actually plant them so that you guys could emulate it. But I also want to get it out soon enough that if you want to try it, it's not too late in the season. You can see this is a bit of a messy job, but that's part of the fun of it as well. Now this is a bit time consuming. Each of these plants costs about $3 to $5, so it's not particularly expensive if you buy them like I did. Most nurseries that sell aquatic plants, pond plants, at least in this planting zone, the plants aren't available until end of April, which is way too late for my purposes, as I want to get everything seeded and started well in advance of moving my fish out in early May. So it makes most sense for me to buy younger plants like this online so that I can get my bins seeded, started, allow all the microorganisms to start growing and thriving so that there's food for the fish and so that the plants have time to really take hold to filter the water. Right now it's looking like I'll be able to plant the bins within a week or two in the yard. But again, here in the greenhouse, we can get started right away. Now, when you're adding these into the tub, I like to hold them right at the surface and just slowly let the water seep over the edge. That way, not as much of the top dressing gets blown into the tub. And it also allows the soil to saturate, and then that way they don't fall over. And these are not their final placements. This is just where I'm putting them for now to let them convert. So now what I've done is separate the plants into two types. These are the ones that can go a bit deeper, so I'm going to put these in these aquatic plant buckets. And then the ones that stay a bit more shallow will go in the solid tubs that I'll drill the bottoms of. And again, I just line these with newspaper. Every year someone says something about, am I not concerned about the inks in the newspaper? And the answer is no. No, I'm not. It's never been a problem in my over decade of doing this, so I'm not particularly concerned. I've used all sorts of newsprints and advertisements and stuff like that, and it's never been a problem. So this one, I fill it about halfway full up to the edge of the newspaper, which again is going to try and keep our soil from going into the water column. And then this one I'll do a mixed bag. This is sweet flag. Just sticking the roots into the soil. And then I have some of the mini cattails. My hands are a disaster. And then I have Imperial Taro, which gets pretty darn big, so I'm just going to make sure this stuff has lots of space. And then again, I'll cover it with the aquatic plant media that is basically inert. And then once I have this in bins, I'll probably put some creeping Jenny around the top as well. Now I could fill this up to the surface, but what I've found over the years is that as the levels in the tubs ebb and flow, it's easier to not fill them the whole way. Same thing, gently submerge it. And then we'll repeat that. Uh-oh. That's not good. Now a lot of these shallower plants I got to supplement my tubs that have been running for a long time, or my baskets. I really have so many plants, it's not that have overwintered from year to year. It doesn't really cost me that much each year to restart. I usually lose a few of the tropicals, things like dwarf papyrus, things like that I just didn't even bother getting this year, because the stuff that is more temperate overwinters so well, it seems like a waste of money to replace plants each year when I can grow ones that I like just as much. Gently submerge. So now what I'm doing is pulling out some of my existing pots and clearing the surface to be able to add in some of these new shallow plants. Now this is Louisiana iris, which can take some depth but also does really well kept shallow. So I'm going to add some of these shallower plants into those buckets just for some more dimension and interest. And take this time as well to pull out any dead plant matter, stuff that hasn't started to grow back. This is again that variegated water celery, which is really, really cool. We'll take a closer look here too. I'm going to go ahead and do this with a bunch of stuff, and then we'll take a look and see, whoops, and then we'll take a look and see what all I've done. Now, until I'm ready to move stuff outside, some of this stuff is going to be kept in tubs in the greenhouse that just have a thin covering of water for now. This is Creeping Jenny. It's one of my favorites. You can see how beautiful it is, and it really sends out amazing roots. And this one will come back in your garden as well, and I like to put that over the edge of the tub, because then once this is hung on the side of one of my containers, all of these plants will send out roots down, and it'll also grow across the water surface. It's really attractive. So I'm going to go ahead and pot all that stuff up and we'll take a look. So what I've done is put all the pots that have plants that can go into deep water into the bins for now. And then I've moved all the ones that are for, 6 inches or less up in these 2 shallow tubs until the weather stabilizes. And a lot of these will be ones that I'll use in my big bins or the smaller bins out in my yard, but some of them will also be ones that I'll add down here to the 2 lower levels. But for now, I'm going to leave it like this, let all of these really root and establish before I flood them completely. These are the plants for my friend Sheila. And then I'm going to move these out into the yard as testers because I have 80,000 million D, bajillion D pots of this rush, or Louisiana iris rather. And it actually grows native in this area, and I have it growing in my yard over by my goldfish pond. So I'm going to move this out and just see how this stuff does over the next week. And if it looks good, then I'll start moving more stuff out. But it's still a bit earlier than I generally go. So I'm being cautious. All in all, you can see most of the previous year's pots got a facelift. They all got new top dressing, the algae removed, decaying plant matter removed. And then things like the creeping Jenny, or water mint, or water celery added in on the edge. And then there's a bunch of rushes, and I just again re-top dressed all the old pots, removing any of the decaying stuff. And everything looks a lot fresher and should grow in a lot nicer now. And then again, the stuff that's flooded in the bins will be moved to deeper areas as needed, or left to grow like this. We'll have to see. The only thing that came in that wasn't very impressive were the floaters. The mosaic plant looks mostly like it had been frozen, though nothing else had that level of damage. It looks awful. And the sensitive plant pieces were exceptionally tiny. But again, knowing as we do how that plant can grow, I'm not particularly concerned because they do have, for the most part, good color. And again, I'll be growing that out in the yard and in the greenhouse this year. So yeah, again, just to recap, I try and group the plants that I'm potting by the level they inhabit within the water garden, patio pond, or bog. That way, you know, the needs are being met. Sometimes this means planting single species pots. Often this means we can do mixed species pots of a bunch of plants that have varying heights, colors, textures, but all have the same requirements as far as depth. And we'll make sure we check in on this stuff frequently, so make sure you subscribe with that notification bell on so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. I'm going to move these guys out into the yard and probably post on my Instagram, which is Rachel O'Leary or Ms. Jinxed, in the next few days to tell you if they've had any shock or anything.